Welcome to FantasyFran.com. Week 13, wide receivers. Sports crazy Chris Barnes with you. And with me today, it's not Hall of Fame quarterback,
No, it is not.
but Hall of Fame analyst, Mr. Eddie Bevins. And Eddie, I appreciate you joining me. We're here to talk about the wide receiver position. Give us the top five, starting with number one.
Number one has to be Wes Welker this week. I mean, he's been having a phenomenal year, no matter who he's playing. But this week he has the Colts. The Colts are on the docket, and Welker, I mean, what does it go? It goes without saying. He's going to have a huge day.
Absolutely. And number two, I think, is a guy who Fran typically has at number one most weeks, Calvin Johnson. Only reason we don't have him at number one is because of the big matchup between New England and Indianapolis. But Calvin Johnson should have a big week, a bounce-back week. Matthew Stafford should kind of play a little bit better than he did last week and deliver the ball to Calvin Johnson. He should have a pretty big game against New Orleans and their defense, which, as we know, there are yards and there are touchdowns to be had.
That's true. Number three, we have Greg Jennings. He's Aaron Rodgers' favorite target. I mean, there's so many guys on that Green Bay team to throw to. You've got Randall Cobb, you've got Donald Driver, you've got James Jones, you've got Jordy Nelson, you've got Jermichael Finley, you've got the running backs who have some talent, but Aaron Rodgers always finds a way to go back to Greg Jennings. That's his favorite. I mean, he might have some down weeks here and there, but he's a good bet for close to 100 yards, maybe a touchdown most games, and especially this week against the Giants. We saw how much they struggled against the pass last week against New Orleans, and Green Bay is basically a better version of that same attack.
And number four, Steve Smith. The guy has had a rebirth.
Yes.
He has been reborn. Hallelujah. But here's the deal. If you take a look at this guy last year, you could see him on the sideline. He was a disturbance. He didn't run the plays that the offensive coordinator was running. He didn't get along with Jimmy Clausen. They couldn't get him the ball. He basically quit last year. I hate to say it, but he did. In steps Cam Newton. This guy is reborn. He is playing like a beast. He's catching balls, making plays, making people miss, running over people. Steve Smith is the real deal going up against Tampa Bay this week. Tampa Bay has been somewhat of a disappointment. They've lost some defensive tackles, which basically allows the quarterback to stand back there a little bit longer. Cam Newton can take the time, escape the pocket, deliver the ball down the field to Steve Smith. Steve Smith's going to have a big day this week. We have him at number four.
Yeah. And at number five, from Fran's Vikings, Percy Harvin.
That might be a surprise to some folks.
But he came through in a big way last week against the Falcons. I think he had 8 catches for almost 100 yards. Without Adrian Peterson, Minnesota needs to find some way to generate some offense. And he is their very best playmaker when you don't have Peterson available. He is a dynamic guy who can create plays as a runner. He can catch the ball. He can do some things on special teams even. He is one of those guys, you just find ways to get him the ball, let him do his thing, and he'll help you do some offense. Going up against Denver this week, Denver's playing really well on defense.
They are.
Minnesota needs him to do some things because other teams have struggled to move the ball against the Broncos, and I think Harvin is kind of their secret weapon.
Fair enough.
Now, I want to talk about just a guy just outside of the top 5. Victor Cruz has been playing well. We've had Hakeem Nicks around the top 5 occasionally this year.
Sure.
Have you been surprised by kind of the pecking order for the wide receivers with the Giants this year?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I am surprised that it's happened so late. I don't know if you remember last year in the preseason, Victor Cruz comes out of nowhere in the preseason, catches 5 touchdowns in a game. All of a sudden, he doesn't make the team. How does that happen? The Giants were not near as talented at the wide receiver position last year as they are this year. But Victor Cruz didn't make the team. Now, this year, all of a sudden, he comes out of nowhere. But people need to take a look. He was there last year. He just didn't make the team. So, in steps Victor Cruz, who obviously has oodles of talent. He has the best breakaway speed of any of the guys. But the thing is that you take a look and you would say, okay, well, they burnt this draft pick to get Hakeem Nicks, and they burnt this draft pick to go ahead and get Victor Cruz. Hakeem Nicks should be the clear number 1. He is not. Victor Cruz is the guy in New York, make no mistakes. Then it's Hakeem Nicks. Okay, that's fine. Mario Manningham's kind of gotten lost in the mix.
He has.
But he has great talent.
He does.
But the other thing, and part of the reason Manningham's kind of gone by the wayside, is the emergence of Jake Ballard. So we'll see what happens, but make no mistake, Victor Cruz is the real deal. Now I got to ask you, because I'm curious, Andre Johnson, I have him on 2 of my teams. It's been a total disaster. He comes back last week. What did you see, and what do you think moving forward?
Well, I mean, it was kind of a slow game. He had, 2 catches for a little over 20 yards. Wasn't much of a first game back. I mean, but they kind of worked him in slowly. You know, after missing 6 weeks, it's hard to expect him to step right back in and become Andre Johnson again.
Sure.
You know, and especially last week when they had Matt Leinart starting at QB. Matt Leinart was the king of checkdowns. He's fighting with Joe Flacco for the title, really. I mean, it's a battle royale between those two. I mean, Leinart, I think, completed like 10 passes last week for less than around 50 yards. It's terrible.
That is terrible.
And that's not the kind of passing game that's going to really help Andre Johnson. Andre Johnson wants to go down the field. TJ Yates is a total unknown. I mean, he's a 5th-round rookie out of UNC. Yeah, set some school records there, but then again, that's not a school known for producing quarterbacks. But at the very least, it looks like he's a little more willing to throw the ball downfield, which would help Andre Johnson out at least more so than having Matt Leinart under center. I mean, it's probably still not going to be where it was with Matt Schaub, obviously, but hopefully having TJ Yates, he knows that he can throw to the big man down the field, and just hopefully he can go get it. I don't know that he's going to be quite ready this week, but I think as you round into the fantasy playoffs, weeks 15 and 16, that's when he'll really be rounding into shape.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, I hope you're right. So we will see. But these are our top 5 picks at the wide receiver position for this week 13. Make sure to join us back for week 14, picks, projections, and videos right here at fantasyfran.com.